I am so happy to be here today, most certainly, and thank you all for coming. My name is Stacy. My pronouns are she and her. And for those of you who are visually impaired, I'm kind of salt and pepper haired woman, white woman with a black shirt and kind of a white background, and there's some kind of like plant art thing behind me. And closed caption should be enabled. If for some reason it's not, let us know in the chat. I'm going to be here today just letting you know about our event and closing us off when the event's over. And let me, while I'm at it, tell you a little bit more about what Inform Your Community is and what it does. Inform Your Community is a nonpartisan nonprofit. And what we do is have fun events that are infused with information about different topics. And you're at our speaker series today, which is called, that program is called the Know-It-All series. Know-It-All program, and so we're so happy to have you here today. You can go ahead and find out about all of our other programs at informyourcommunity.org, and tell your friends to sign up for our mailing list as well, and follow us on social media. We appreciate that. If you're watching this video recording of us today, and we put these on YouTube after the event, for those who can't make it, feel free to subscribe and like and share so that more people can benefit from what you are going to be seeing today. So DEI is very clearly an important topic, and I'm very happy to say we know it's an important topic. If nothing else, in our almost 3 years of being an organization, this is our for our Know-It-All series, our highest registered event. We have not had as many people registered for our Know-It-All series events as we have for this event today. So I'm so glad that so many people are interested in this topic. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's a framework that helps to rectify some of the imbalances that people face in organizations in terms of the representation of folks from different groups, and how that kind of trickles up to the decision making and power that is inherent in organizations. And so, for example, 84 respondents to a survey noted that they had experienced some microaggressions at work. And so, having programs like this and having programs in a workplace that are DEI related helps people to understand what microaggressions are. And we will certainly talk about that more today, I have no doubt. So our facilitator today is Robbie Copley, and he is going to be talking with our panelists, which I'm so excited. Robbie will tell you more about himself in just a moment. I'm going to be helping out tech throughout the event, so if you need anything, you can message me. And of course, if you have any questions or comments during the chat, feel free to put your little hand emoji up, or put your questions in the chat, and we'll be sure to answer those soon as we can. So thank you, Robbie. Why don't you take it away?
Sure. Thank you, Stacy. Hi, everybody. Happy to see everybody here. I haven't been to an event in a little bit. I was traveling a lot, so I'm glad to be back. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Robbie. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a white man with orange hair. I'm wearing a little flannel shirt sitting in front of a window. You might see my orange and white cat also passing by, my little mini-me. I am joined today by 4 know-it-alls, and we use that term lovingly. We have with us Karthi Veeramani, Sanae Elmoudden, and Jessica Mayer. Our 4th actually couldn't make it. I think that's right? She
yes.
Wasn't feeling well. So we have 3 wonderful know-it-alls today. Lovingly know-it-alls who are going to help us to understand diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I invite our 3 guests to either, let me see if I can actually turn on my view of them, because I only see Stacy. But if Karthi wants to begin by introducing herself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Hi, thank you, Robbie. Thanks for having me on this panel. And I'm so sorry that I'm walking and speaking. I am a career woman, I guess, and I'm leaving work and on the way home.
Also, this is the TikTok generation, right? So we're used to this. We're used to seeing the walk and talk.
Fair, fair. But I should be at my desk shortly, hopefully by the time we're all done with introductions. But yeah,
Okay.
my name is Karthi Veeramani, and I'm the Director of Operations at a New York-based charter school. And I've been doing DEI related work, I would say since college, maybe since I remember. It's just a way of life, this journey of nonstop learning. And so, yeah, happy to be here and share my learnings over the years with everyone in this space.
Thank you. We're happy to have you here. We know that you're very knowledgeable in this topic, so that's why we love having you. Next, maybe if Sanae would like to introduce herself. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. I always forget that. Hi, I'm Sanae. Let's see, I use she and her pronouns, and I have curly hair, I'm light black, and I'm wearing very colorful clothing because I hate moving towards winter, so I am accessorizing myself as much as I can before then. I come to diversity, equity, and inclusion from mental illness and disability perspective. So I will share some of my thoughts as well as some of my own experience with this. I'm looking forward to discussing this in the safe space. Thank you.
Yes, and again, we're so happy to have you here. Last time we worked together, we had fun and learned a lot. So very happy to have you back. Next, we have Jessica Mayer, who is also one of our board members, who is brilliant and hilarious, and we're always happy to have her. So Jessica, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and giving us your DEI background.
I'm hilarious.
You are.
Yeah, okay. Then I should be doing stand-up comedy. Actually,
You could.
what I do is how I got into this work is through the Disability Channel. I have cerebral palsy, so don't adjust your screen. I really do talk and move like this. So anyway, and I'm wearing a purple shirt with flowers all over, long earrings. I have red glasses on, short hair. I'm a white woman. And I'm looking forward to answering anybody's questions. And yeah, so that's how I got into it through the disability sphere.
Yeah, and also you're very knowledgeable about organizations and disability rights. So again, very happy to have you here. So I was wondering if anybody has a definition of DEI that's different than the one Stacy gave. Like, do you have any nits to pick about that? Jessica?
Well, my definition of DEI is diversity is normal. Diversity of thought, diversity of everything, but inclusion is hard. And equity is harder because you have to find out what people need. So for instance, I'm a person with a disability, so you wouldn't necessarily ask me to take notes at a meeting. You would know to give that to somebody else because my CP prevents me from doing that. So it gives everybody an opportunity to come to the table with their full self. So that's my definition of DEI. Inclusion's not easy either.
Yeah, I like the idea that it's clear that, diversity is normal, right? That's what you said. And then inclusion is hard, and then equity is like really hard.
Right.
How do you actually get that?
Right.
Does Sanae or Karthi want to jump in?
Yeah, I can jump in. And I want to second take at properly introducing myself, if that's okay.
Oh, sure, yes.
But I come to DEI from a post-colonial lens. That's my specialty, and I'm someone who identifies as a woman a straight woman of Indian descent, triply diasporic. So I was, born in Malaysia, raised in Singapore, then raised in the US. So just a complex pastiche of identities that guide me through the world, and also my work in the DEI realm. And my pronouns are she, her, most importantly. And I wanted to piggyback off of Jessica, because I in a previous conversation that I had with Jessica, she was saying inclusion has to be intentional. And that's something I've quoted often since I had that conversation with Jessica. So I wanted to elevate that piece here. And my definition
I said that. I don't even remember saying it.
Yes, you said it, and I always give credit to you, Jessica.
Okay.
And for me, DEI or DEAI or DBIE, or the alphabet soup, some including accessibility, some including belonging, and many other words in the abbreviation, is all a step one, a lens, a framework, like Stacey said, a step one, a framework into how we make sense of the complex world around us. To me, it is something that is about everyone. But at the same time, recognizing the power structures in which we live in, and recognizing that some folks come to the table with a little bit more of an advantage than other folks. Some folks can't even get to the table. How do we bridge those gaps, that equity piece, in a way that is truly equitable and that gets buy-in from everyone who's involved? And that's I think the equity piece, the challenge that Jessica was highlighting. And so I think this only highlights like DEI is like step one. And then there's like everything else that comes after. So it's to help us contextualize what it means to be a complex human being in the world, living in various power structures, institutional structures that were, built around us, and how that impacts. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Also, it's about othering the other.
Yes.
Who we other and who we don't other. So
yeah, absolutely.
I would like to add to that, if I think I look at it from, and I'm sorry if I interrupted your thoughts, Kathy, actually. I don't know if you were done or not, but
I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, so I look at it from the education context, because that's where I am, where I reside for my work. And so for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion means also voice. Where is voice located? Who gets to have that voice and who doesn't? For instance, I'm thinking about the classroom. So right now, as we all know, with the whole situation in Israel and Palestine, I have students who are Jewish and students who are Palestinians. And for instance, the media is with the context and the voice goes one direction versus another. So when I think about diversity and equity and inclusion, in this context right now, it is a very difficult thing to show the voices that are all need to be there, but some of them get heard and others don't get heard. So, and how that gets managed, it's very challenging. So it's not as easy as definitional. It's a little bit more complicated, just like that it was saying. So, these types of environments that we have right now that we are talking, hopefully it can get some of these things resolved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hearing all three of your perspectives on that makes me think like equity. I don't want to say equity is impossible, but it sounds like it's aspirational. Like, you know, it's setting up the framework is the first step, and then actually achieving equity is like that's always just going to be the dream. But in the meantime, amplifying voices and trying to provide access and get people to the table. So what, let me ask Sanae, if I can, what inspired you about DEI? Like when did you first encounter it as a concept, and what about it kind of drew you in?
I mean, as a concept, I guess it has been around since the 60s, from what I understand, right? But it's interesting the way I see it. It comes like in flux in the US, and sometimes it is very applauded and encouraged and hoped for, etc. Especially like, you know, after George Floyd, for instance, that became a thing. And for us at the university level, people start talking about diversity statements in different places, you know, like to have them within departments and within the university, etc. So around 4 years ago, a little bit more, I came to it from this perspective. My experience with it is through my son, who is actually, he lives with mental illness, schizoaffective to be precise. And those of you who may not know what schizoaffective is, it's elements from schizophrenia and elements from bipolar or depression. And so, so that is what is called invisible disability. So in other words, the person may be very smart, but they are not functioning to the extreme, some of the ways that other people may be functioning. And because it's invisible, people do not take them seriously. And because it's invisible, even, you know, governmental help is not accessible. Because when you go and try to get disability, for instance, they would say, well, this person does not have physical disability, even though mental illness is very challenging and people may not be able to work. So that's where I came from it, and I was hoping to hear more from Jessica, that she's involved in this. And what I'm talking about is just my own experience and some of the things that I have seen with people on Facebook, for instance, who have similar issues. So that's how I came to it from this perspective.
Okay, Jessica, maybe do you want to answer the same question?
Well, from my perspective is I know a lot of people on disability that have mental illnesses, so he can get disability if you hire a lawyer to help you get it. You have to get a lawyer. Everybody needs a lawyer to help them get disability.
Yeah, we did that actually. They are claiming they cannot. The lawyer claimed he cannot do it because of they are
They
claiming
always reject you the first time.
Yeah, we did it actually 3 times. It has been a struggle, but I mean, I don't want it to be about my experience. I just, in general, this like it's a struggle that they don't take as seriously as others, other disabilities when you deal with, and this is not something that's just coming from me. I am part of different groups on Facebook from different states, and many of them say similar things as
And
well.
Sanae, you've joined us, right, for our Invisible Disability event. Is that right? Because we've had a couple of events on that topic.
I'm not so sure if I did join. I joined on another one like this. So.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure we'll do that topic again. So you should definitely join us for that. But Jessica, could you tell us a little bit about when you first encountered DEI and what drew you into it?
Well, when it was really, my own disability, and where does disability fit in to corporate America? And, and it's under diversity a lot of the times, or under EEOC some of the times, and under employee relations. So my first really encounter with DEI was when I worked with Chase on disability issues. I worked with the people from DEI, so I figured it went in there, so that, and through that I learned about others, in conferences and other things. I learned a lot more about other people and their struggles too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a learning experience for me all the way around. So I love that aspect of it. I'm just not learning about disability issues.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning about other issues, LGBTQ issues of Black people, issues of people who speak other languages, even people who have different views than I do. So,
Right. Yeah, it's very mind expanding, this whole topic, because you start realizing there's as many people as there are perspectives. Reverse that. Karthi, if I know you said that this has basically been a way of life for you forever, like even before DEI was an acronym that you knew, you kind of lived this. How do you communicate the values or the mission of DEI to your colleagues, and how do you introduce the concept to people who might not know what you're talking about? Like you walk into a room with a bunch of, let's just say, older white people who aren't familiar with it. How do you even begin to explain this?
Why just older white people? Let's start with my family. The people who brought me onto this earth. It starts from very similar to Jessica and Sanae. I think one piece that they both highlighted is the personal is political. And that's where I started figuring out how to have those conversations. Not to say that I have it figured out at all. This journey began at home. When you have that interpersonal relationship and have to navigate the dynamics of that relationship while also communicating something that may or may not be agreeable to the person we're speaking with. And in a workplace setting, a common point that or an entry point that I find accessible to use is respect. Let's start with respect. Everybody at a workplace, because I've used, and this is a strategy I've used for myself, and so I'm also speaking from that perspective to say, when I, as an employee, accept a job, nowhere in my job description does it say I will be disrespected and I have to be okay with it. I will be insulted or patronized and be okay with it, right? Or anything along those lines. And so when I especially speak to people with more power than me, I start with, I as a human being have rights, and I'm here to advocate for myself from that space. So it starts a lot with like this kind of coaching myself to be in an empowered space, whether I feel it or not, and then speaking from there. And once I'm able to do that, then I'm able to advocate for other folks in that space. And that's usually how, in a more organic scenario, that's how it happens. Like usually, one person's advocating for themselves or for another person, and then like we get wrapped up into the core of the issue, which could be microaggressions, which could be blatant racism, blatant sexism, denying someone opportunities at work because of their disability, right? It could be any range of those things. Nowadays, we have, for better or worse, initiatives taken on by various companies, right? We have a DEI committee. We hired a DEI person. And so that, when used well, gives all employees in an organization an opportunity to like enter that space of like, okay, let me first learn what is what is the definition of the word microaggressions? And start with, do I see this happen anywhere else? And then go deeper. Do I do it? Do I perpetuate microaggressions? Right. And it's like this like very gradual process, which definitely does not happen in one conversation. It's truly, it has to be an ongoing effort. There was one organization I worked with where, when we had very strong DEI leadership, there was great accountability, just respect among staff, and we were able to practice equity to the best of our ability. And when that singular person exited the organization, suddenly the structures were not there to keep the work going. And everything slowly reverted back to like how things usually were. I had people in power flat out yelling at their employees, swearing at employees, saying very problematic things about people's age, people's identity, whether it's a sexual orientation or ethnic identity or racial identity, or saying very, very ableist things, with no regard to what the impact of their words are in an organization when they hold so much power. And I think about that organization often, because that's a prime example of like how it's not just you have a committee for a year, you come, you do the work, you leave. It is truly ongoing, and it's only effective when every person involved does internal interrogation. No matter how we identify, I am privileged in some ways, but marginalized in other ways. And I have to interrogate both. I have to interrogate all the ways I perpetuate microaggressions. I might perpetuate microaggressions in the workspace, within my family, right? That interrogation has to be constant and ongoing, and has to be done by everyone, no matter what positionality we occupy.
I feel like you just inadvertently answered a question in the chat, I think from Alexis, who asked, how do we prevent microaggressions in the workplace? And you're saying you need to interrogate everybody needs to be interrogating their own biases, right? And how they might be contributing, how they're privileged, how they're not. Yeah, that was a good.
It's like if I work with this is how with Robbie, and if I work with Sun is that, how do you pronounce it? I'm sorry. You're on mute. How do you pronounce it?
It's Sanae.
Sanae. And if I work with Sanae, and if I say, oh, Bobby, if I'm introducing Robbie and Sanae to Karthi, if I'm saying Robbie is our best worker here, he's really fabulous, he's really great. Oh yeah, this is Sanae. Sanae is gonna feel about this more. And Robbie's a white guy, you know, and Sanae is going to feel horrible on many levels, right? She's going to feel horrible because she's a woman. She's going to feel horrible because she's a person of color. And for all that you know, Sanae may do better work than Robbie does. So, yeah, you just say they're both great workers. You know, whatever. It's a microaggression. That's like one of the things, like little things mean a lot. That's considered a microaggression.
I think it's helpful. I think examples are helpful like that because there's so many different ways people can feel marginalized.
Right.
So people need as many illustrations of it probably as possible. Sanae, I think I'm going to ask you, because I think you mentioned this, you said something about the 60s, I think, that when DEI kind of entered the conversation as a way to think about organizations.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
From what I understand, it's like early on around the 60s, the conversation started, the civil rights and all that started happening. But it seems to me like it takes different different times when it is very appreciated and other times when the window closes down.
Yeah.
And somehow I feel right now, again, this is not backed up with data, but there's a feeling that it's that window of the idea is closing down to some extent. I mean, if you think about what's going on in different states, right, where books are being banned, where even using different words, right, is being changing and is being criticized as something that should not be around. So to me, it feels like that window is closing down and we should keep these conversations going so that it's not something that will just evaporate or vanish. So for instance, what the conversation that we just had in a little bit here with the wonderful examples that Jessica has given, something for microaggression, it's connected to implicit bias, right? Many of us are not even aware of some of these microaggressions that we are doing. And if we don't raise awareness on it, and tell different people what are some of the things that we do that may be, coming from our implicit bias unconsciously. Well, we don't know about it, right? But we have in our DNA somewhere that we have taken from different places, right? For instance, this is an example that I always share with my students where it's like a person, a father or mother going with their child 5 years old, right? And as soon as they see a person of color coming towards them, they move the child from one hand to another, right? And right there, something happens. It's for that child seeing this person coming and the movement to another place, even though it was nonverbal. The parent did not anything, but it was nonverbal. They already got that unconscious bias, right? And therefore, that's how they will deal to some extent. I mean, nothing is causal, obviously, but to some extent, that's something that they would carry with them, and therefore, much of our job, people who work within this area, is to dismantle all of these like unconscious biases that we may have, and like Kathy said, it's starting within us, until my son started, developed the mental illness. I used to say something like someone's schizophrenic or someone, I have learned from my research later on that it's best to use the person first and say with the type of disability that they have. Therefore, there's the focus on the human being first, rather than, well, this person is this way or this way, which becomes an insult rather than a descriptive.
Mm-hmm.
That language is changing now. There is a movement afoot that says disabled person is better than person with a disability, because you don't say a person with Indianness, a person with blackness. You say a black person or an Indian person or a white person or a woman. So it's kind of being switched around because of the disability pride movement now. Instead of saying, I don't really care, just don't call me physically challenged or handicapable or special or person with special needs. Call it an adaptation. Call it an adaptive need. Don't euphemize. Don't. What's the word I'm thinking about?
Euphemism?
Euphemism. Thank you.
Yeah.
A little stupid in my old age. I guess. I know.
No, but I feel like that should be a verb. Like we should have a verb for that, like a euphemize, but it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound
what
right.
I was saying. It was euphemizing it. I
Yeah,
don't
right.
think that's a word, but
Yeah, but I knew what you meant.
Actually, Jessica, you bring up something I think really important that I often hear about, not just in my workplace, but other social scenarios. And someone had just asked a question about, I think Dr. Pierre had asked about the DEI entering conversation to clean up the language we were using, or this idea of political correctness and how that's sweeping things under the rug but not really getting to the root of the problem. And language is changing. Language is constantly going to be changing. It's changed from 100 years ago. And with the advent of technology, that change is just much faster. And one piece that I have learned is that, like, what I thought was the right way to say something 5 years ago may not be the right way to say according to some folks. So I recently came across a conversation where I generally don't refer to my spouse as husband, just either spouse or partner. And I'm a straight cis woman, and someone was sharing that, straight folks should not be appropriating that language. That's something that word is for the queer community. Like it isn't right that straight folks are, co-opting that language too. And like that brings a whole other perspective, right, into the conversation of like, okay, how do we use language? And with each new generation's experience, new thoughts and new ways of making meaning develops. And my learning is that, say I say something thinking it's the ethical way to, they describe someone, and they're, they push back, or they're offended, or they share that, well, that is not appropriate. Like, don't get defensive. It's their identity. Everyone wants to be heard, and everyone wants to be respected. And it doesn't matter that I'm trying my best and I have the best intentions. What matters is, do I react with, oh, can you explain like what I said wrong, or which part of it? Like, I just want to learn more, and open that conversation. And I don't always expect the person to explain, because they should not have to take that mental load or do that emotional labor, right? Maybe, and that's a signal for me to like, okay, I need to look more into this. I need to either talk to someone, I need to research a little bit, right? And not expect the person who I'm having this conversation with do the emotional labor of educating. So it's like, it has to be a lot of internal, like ongoing internal work to like truly keep this DEI work going.
And it seems like there isn't a clear-cut answer like that. I love your example about spouse and partner, because my husband is really adamant about using the word husband. Whenever I say like my partner or spouse or something, he's like, I'm your husband. And so it's so funny that like in the queer community, it's like, no, we're going to use the terms that, you know what I mean? But then in the straight community, it might be like, well, should we use partner? Because, and it's, so it's like, it's not clear. It feels like, I don't know, from my perspective, it feels like you should use whatever you're comfortable with. So it doesn't matter if you're straight or gay.
Right.
I like the fact that about the language and how it changes depending, on different times, but it changes depending on the person themselves, because what may work for me, for instance, might not work for someone else, right? So, and it's challenging, right? Because you don't know what is going to work for a person. So asking the question of how do I refer to you, just the same way that we do with pronouns, I think is very important to ask the question to be helpful. I came from, with the mental illness, for instance, like historically, saying someone mentally ill has been problematic, right? So that is why the change, when it came, it was like encouraged and absorbed and accepted. Because if you think about it, just saying someone is mental is already challenging a person. You're already making them sound and in a very problematic way. So it's a challenge for me as well. Like, I always think about it. Well, how do I refer to this person? Like, we have done such a great job with the pronouns, I feel like. So now we ask people to say their pronouns, because we had that challenge like at the university, and in the classrooms we had challenges like that where you refer to students in different formats when we were just transitioning to the she, he, and they, and it became huge problems. Sometimes I had issues, stories to tell in the classroom where students get in so much trouble between them because of these pronouns. Appreciation, and it has transitioned now that people know where they fit and where they are, how they like to be referred to, and it's doing way better, so yeah, I see raising that awareness is very important, but also like keeping with the changes, I guess, because like if you don't keep up with those changes, it's difficult sometimes to know how to refer to someone or yeah.
And you mentioned also the pushback that we're seeing in various states and communities and organizations around the country. People don't like pronouns, people don't like political correctness, all this stuff. How do any of you have an example of how you respond to the attacks on DEI?
I would say it's a necessary part because you're different. Even your attack on DEI is diversity. So if you think about it that way, we all have a difference of opinion, and difference of thought is also diverse. So, and can I just piggyback on something? I always assume good intent. Maybe I should. I recently had a doctor who said to me, "Oh, you're just doing so well," infantilizing me. And I was a little pissed off about the whole thing. And I let it go. And then I went back to him with another issue. And I asked it differently. I was very straightforward. And he changed his tune really fast. You didn't look at the other leg and you didn't do the comparison. And he responded. He said he sent me for the test, and I went for the test, and he actually called me to tell me it was fine. This is an orthopedic surgeon who called me. They don't call anybody. So I scared the crap out of him probably with what I said, and he listened, and then the next time I was there after that for something else, got a lot of orthopedic issues now. Getting on, 8 for sissies. Anyway, 8 for wins. I'm doing bad DEI things, but oh well. But it's kind of, I assume, good intent unless somebody proves to me that they're not going to change, and then I move on.
Right.
Okay, next question.
Sorry.
It's good. It's just that we only have a few minutes left somehow. I'm like looking at the clock. So Black and Indigenous people and other people of color make up 17% of the C-suite, right? So that's like CEOs, CFOs, CTOs. And this is according to research company Gartner. We also see less than 1% of Fortune 500 CEOs identify as LGBTQ. Has DEI helped push this at all, or what are the results in recent years? Are we seeing a greater, an increase in women in C-suite, BIPOC in C-suite? What results have you seen?
I can give an example. I mean, like Microsoft, for instance, has done some changes in their executive board. So you have like different vice presidents who are women and also people of color, like there are 7 of them, and I think they have 3 who are women and people of color. So that's kind of like, I don't know, 1/4 or something like that. So I don't know, honestly, because the research has said similar data that you quote about 10 years ago, and it's increasing, but very minimally, it seems like, especially when it's at that top, at that glass ceiling, So is it doing some work? Yes, I think without it, we probably won't like reach the glass ceiling, right? But it's doing that work in a very slow motions. And I think it goes back to those windows that open up and close down. So the push that is happening right now, for instance, I think it decreases any of these chances where people can move around, right, in different states. And I heard even like at the university, some people who are working with diversity like on a daily basis, they're starting to talk about, well, there's a little bit of a push. I don't know, people are starting to say, maybe you should change the names of your communities and things like that. So it's tricky from that perspective.
It's a good example though, Microsoft. I've been at organizations where there's a lot of DEI talk. Like there's an officer, there's surveys going out, there's like a lot of activity around it. But then you look at the board or the president or the, just all the leadership and you're like, huh.
Right.
So I think sometimes it can be a kind of just a talking point. Okay, so there is a question in the chat that I want to get to. That says, how do we get more involved in DEI? Who wants to take that? Jessica, please.
And then I'll hand it over to Karthi. Okay. If you have a DEI council in your company, get on it. If you have a group of if you have a BRG or an ERG, get involved in that, which is an employee resource group. And if they have events, if your company has events, for the months, you should do those events. You can do those events. There's a lot of ways to get involved. Karthi, you want to talk more about that?
Sure. Thank you, Jessica. I think, first of all, joining this IYC panel is a great way to get started on, having these DEI conversations and just getting a pulse, getting a pulse on where the conversation is going now, and and accessing other resources as well. There are definitely, so there's the external piece, definitely, like Jessica mentioned, getting involved in the employee resource group, seeing what resources your company, your workplace might already have, and maybe having conversations with the right folks might be very helpful. From a personal lens or an internal lens, it starts with interrogation. And just really thinking about, how do my actions impact others in the day-to-day, and really and being thoughtful about it and genuine about it, because that moment where you feel you've said something, or I feel I've said something and I don't think it was the right thing to say and I feel icky about it, like, that's normal. We have to sit in that feeling and acknowledge, okay, that was the impact of what I did, and then think about, how can I rectify this? I know I'm like talking in like theoretical terms, but I'm trying to pull an example, and it's not. Oh, there was a moment at my workplace this last week actually when I was asking about why an HR person, like why we don't have this particular benefit, and when they responded, I immediately was like, I've done HR before. Like there is a way to do, and after that moment, like during that moment, and then right after, I was like, why did I sound so obnoxious to this person who's just trying to do their job? And so then I like sat with it for a second and then wrote back to the person saying, by the way, I, should not have should not have invalidated your expertise. My knowledge is from a very specific area and a very specific context. It's like really understanding, like, I have limitations, and asking sorry when you're wrong is when I'm wrong is not a bad thing. And of course that's a more benign-ish example, but you can apply that to microaggressions, like really reflecting on how our words and actions impact others on the day-to-day, and also starting by reading some books. There are some very powerful resources out there. If you want to get started on, or enter the conversation around anti-racism and white privilege, you can reach out. You can read. I'm blanking on the author's name. How to Be Anti-Racist. Abraham Candy, yes, thank you. And Robin DiAngelo, to learn more about white privilege, or Brene Brown. And this is just like one tiny sub area of this larger diversity conversation.
And also Tim White does really good work on how the history of racism. He's actually white, so
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Great answers. I'm worried that we're like running out of time here. There was one other question in the chat. I wonder if I should ask it, or no, we're out of time. What do you think, Stacy?
Hopefully our folks who are here will bear with us if you want to ask them one more question.
Okay. Dr. Alwyn Pierre asked in the chat, why do we put so much effort in describing ourselves in these limited terms that we eventually trap ourselves in boxes, whereas our power and value as a human being is because of the power of our compelling diversity?
Yeah.
And while you guys contemplate that, I just have to ask Jessica and Karthi and Sanae, I'm not sure if you said anything. If you have the authors' names, if you can throw them in the chat, that would be great. Or message to me, that I'll throw them in the chat. Somebody requested it, but go ahead, contemplate that question.
It's a great question.
It's a wonderful question, actually. I will write I have an author is Difference Matters, and it's Brenda Allen. She's done a lot of work in this section, and her work is very understandable and easy to follow, so it's great. But I think it's I love that question of the boxes, because because when you're in a box, especially if you have so many different things, like Kathy introduced herself earlier, if you're like come from different places, how do you do that? How do you become a part of the box? My background is from Morocco. If you look at me, you may think that I'm Black American or Hispanic, right? And I get confused in different places where it boxes me in these different stereotypes. So it's additional and cumulative stereotypes that some of them are from my background, others are not, but because of my looks, they come with it, and I think reinventing those ideas as well. Like I always think that a change of talk is a change of thought. So talking to ourselves in a different way may be helpful with this boxing, that even though the society boxes us, you know, you're free in your own ways to not box yourself. So I have learned to do that. And I think it changes the way of looking, of having people, of thinking of how people look at you as well.
Yeah. I from a just very like practical policy perspective, strategic essentialism is a necessary evil.
Mm.
It's just necessary, right? When we are advocating for certain laws to be passed, certain benefits to be in place, certain rights to be given to all Americans, despite what our identity is, that strategic essentialism is really important. And that's an idea that comes from Gayatri Spivak, who's a post-colonial scholar. And because of the way our government, our legal system is set up, we have to group ourselves, band ourselves into identity groups to be able to advocate for ourselves. And so while the boxes can be limiting, they can also be the key to liberation. So it's a tricky tool that we have. And I've gone back and forth on this, this listing of my identities when introducing myself. And I've realized there are many, many parts of the world where, folks still live in spaces that are very homogenous. So when I taught at Southern Illinois University, I had students who came from like small towns in Missouri and then Chicago. And the students were in the same classroom. And for the first time in their lives, these students from Missouri, from the smaller towns in Missouri, were seeing a Black person in their life for the first time. And so when I list my identities, I tell the world, I exist, my complexity exists, and this is also a way of being. Yeah. So
Wow.
again, these are all like, right, just a doorway into this larger, more complex world.
Mm-hmm. Well said. All right, I'm afraid we're out of time. So I just
I
want to
don't
thank.
get to answer that question too. I wanted to answer that question from a disability perspective.
Okay. All right. Take it away.
Okay. My identity as a person with a disability is very important to me because it helps me sometimes when I am physically unable to do something, not get angry at me, but look at my disability and say, I'm really pissed off at my CP today, or today is not a good CP day, or whatever. It gives me a perspective on life that I wouldn't have. And I probably would not have half of the friends that I have today if I didn't have a disability. And also, when you're disabled, the kind of inane conversations and how's the weather today, kinds of conversations, I think, take a back seat to emotional maturity or having a good conversation with somebody. It's like I'm not great at conversations like that don't have substance. I'm just not good at that. I don't even like talking about that kind of stuff. So that's me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank all three of you so much for being here. You're all so interesting and knowledgeable. We love having you. And I will pass you to Stacy to close us out. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Robbie, and thank you to our absolutely amazing panelists. I am so glad to have everybody here. I want to take a moment to just thank also Orville made a comment in the chat I wanted to just mention, which is to say that he tells I believe it was his students that there's never been a good strategy for equity that has ever existed, and so the only way we can kind of get there, if I'm phrasing it right, is innovation. And so kind of keep this idea of like, we just have to keep trying to get there, which kind of circles back to what we said earlier about equity. Robbie had said equity is that goal that might be so far in the distance, but we try to make it there. So thank you all. I hope that captured that right for the chat. Orville, you can correct me. Oh, good. He said I expressed it better than he did. I don't think so, but thank you. Thank you all for coming today. We hope you enjoyed this discussion. And I hope you to spread the word about DEI. We are going to help you with that. And we're going to send you this video in a post-event email. We're going to send you our infographic, which has some of these talking points that came up today, but also additional content on that. We're so grateful to have you here. We're going to put on a quick poll for you to ask for your thoughts on this event. So we would so greatly appreciate if you can fill that out for us. We ask also that you please consider committing to a weekly action to help create awareness about diversity, equity, inclusion, especially, given that there is this kind of negative publicity going on about it right now, in particular, that I know Sanae had brought up and Robbie brought up earlier as well. Getting informed and coming to this event is a great way to start, and we're so glad that you were able to do that with us. Our email is also going to include a brief survey. It is not the same questions that are in this survey, so we ask that you also complete that as well. Additionally, our next event, all of our online events are free at Inform Your Community, and we have different programs. We have children's crafting, adult crafting, movie nights, speaker events like these, as well as our what we call smart shopping. So you can check them all out on our website. All of our events for the year are there. We have 36 events this fiscal year, and they're all there for you to register for now. Our upcoming event is a children's crafting event, and that's taking place not this Saturday, but next Saturday at 1 p.m. All the craft materials are free. The event is free, and we actually ship them to you for free if you register a week in advance, and that is as of tomorrow. So do register in advance if you want to get those free materials. But otherwise, you can just come for the event and use your own materials at home. We look forward to you checking out our other great events, and you can check us out at www.informyourcommunity.org. If you're watching this on YouTube, please again like and share, and of course please consider donating, as we are a nonprofit organization that can only exist with your donations. So thank you for that as well in advance. So thank you for coming to this event. Thank you for absolutely amazing panelists, and for Robbie for an absolutely amazing facilitation for the event. Everybody, thank you so much, and have an absolutely wonderful night. We hope to see you at future events.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Robbie.
Bye,
Bye.
Karthi. Thanks for staying.
Thank
Everybody.
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Stacey.
Thanks,
you,
Jessica. Really
Robbie.
appreciate it.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.